fantastic to join you all here today, and well done for getting here through all the barriers and obstacles. It's fantastic all turnout. Although we are not huge in number, we are huge in spirit. And we stand for values and principles that are way beyond our numbers. The fundamental principle is that monarchy is not compatible with democracy. In a democracy, no public office should be inherited. We don't have MPs who inherit their parliamentary constituencies. We don't have prime ministers who inherit number 10 Downing Street, and nor should we have heads of state who inherit their position by virtue of being born into one very rich, powerful, privileged, aristocratic family.
Filthy rich.
In many ways, this issue is not about the Queen personally. It's about the institution. In a democracy, we should all have the right to choose our head of state. And if that head of state does not perform their duties well, we should have a right to replace them. The principle is democratic choice and public accountability. And that's one thing that monarchy does not give us. We are stuck with the monarch for life. This particular queen has not been a disaster, in my opinion. She may not have done it absolutely brilliantly, but she's not been a disaster. But let's rewind to the 1930s. We had on the throne King Edward VIII, a man who sympathised with the Nazi regime and may well have conducted a deal with Hitler if he'd invaded and occupied this country. That's one of the dangers of monarchy. You end up with a monarch who might be good or might be bad. And once you've got them, you can't replace them. And that's why the principle of monarchy as head of state is so fundamentally flawed. There's also another issue. People lauded the fact that Barack Obama became the United States' first elected black president, the first head of state of the US. They thought it was wonderful, and it was. But of course, that could never happen here. We cannot have a black or Asian head of state because it resides with the all-white Windsor family. They've got monopoly of the position of head of state. And I know it's not racist by intent, but it's racist by default. So the monarchy system is not racist by intent, but it's racist by default, because it precludes the option of us having a black or Asian head of state of this country, when there are many black and Asian people who are of great character, who are deserving, who would make fine heads of state of this country. There's also the issue of the immense wealth of the royals. As well as not being publicly accountable, they have huge, immense wealth. The royals between them have over 700 servants. That's way more than they need or can be justified. They have 9 royal palaces or residences. 9 royal palaces and residences. Much more than they require. And of course, they have personal fortunes of hundreds of millions of pounds. This is completely incompatible with the ethos of a fair and just society. And it's particularly objectionable at a time of a huge government deficit, when the government is being forced to cut back on vital public services, and when millions of people around this country are suffering hardship as a result. To have vast wealth at the top and public service cuts at the same time is just not fair and not right. Many people say that the royal family is an intrinsic part of British national identity. Well, I don't think my identity as a British citizen requires genuflection to the monarchy. I don't think we need to express our identity through this particularly privileged, well-off royal family. There are other ways we can express it and find it. And of course, one of them might be to celebrate more than we do the huge contribution to humanity of British scientists, inventors, explorers, artists, musicians and sports people. They are people who have done things of great merit, of great achievement. We could also celebrate the huge contribution that Britain has made to social reform. Not only the abolition of slavery, but also the introduction of parliamentary democracy, votes for women and for working class people, the National Health Service. These are all things to be really proud of and which are part of our British identity. The other great flaw in this argument that the Queen represents Britishness is, of course, she's not actually descended from British royals. I don't mind the fact that she's descended from Germans and that we've got a person of German descent on the throne. I don't mind that. I'm open-minded. I welcome a multicultural society. Moreover, her line of German family have been around for quite a long time, so, you know, they're as British as the next person. So we accept them and embrace them. But to suggest that they're quintessentially British is a bit of a stretch. Let's not forget they had to change their name just over 100 years ago because they wanted to hide their German ancestry. So they invented the English name of Windsor to disguise their German past. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's not worry about we are welcoming to people of all races and all nationalities. The other point I'd make is that I compare the huge resources and importance being given over to the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, 60 years on the throne. I compare that with, in my view, a far more worthy 60th anniversary, namely the 60th anniversary of victory in Europe when this people, our nation, defeated fascists. That to me is a far more important anniversary, and by comparison to today's celebrations, it was given relatively low priority. And that's a shame. It's a disgrace. Now, this is not a personal attack on the Queen, but as far as I know, she has never made any personal sacrifices. She's never suffered any hardship. But in the Second World War, millions of British people endured great hardship, suffered great deprivation. Many were killed and wounded. That is far, far worthy of our celebration. Now I remember, on that 60th anniversary, going to central London and joining in the celebrations, as I say, comparatively low-key compared to today, but I stood there in homage and with humility with a very simple placard to address the veterans. Thank you for saving us from fascism. That was a truly heroic sacrifice by British people of the older generation who risked their freedom and their lives so that we could live as free citizens. That to me is a 60th anniversary much more worthy of celebration than the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. The final point I'd make is that people often say, what is the alternative? Well, of course, I don't think any of us would want a US or French-style executive president. I certainly wouldn't. What I'd like is us to follow the Irish example. A low-cost, purely ceremonial, elected head of state. If you look at the recent Irish experience, two past Irish presidents, Mary McAleese and Mary Robinson, were democratically elected by a huge majority. They were two women of extraordinary character and integrity. They performed their public office with great dignity, and they reached out to all sections of Irish society, unlike our Queen. Unlike our Queen, they visited black and ethnic minority organisations. They visited asylum seekers and refugees. They visited lesbian and gay organisations, none of which our Queen has done in recent times.
Went to Epsom.
She may be once or twice visited black and ethnic minority organisations, but very rarely. And as far as I know, she has never ever visited or supported any lesbian or gay charity or welfare organisation. That's a really serious omission. It doesn't signal that the Queen is embracing all the people. And as head of state, our head of state should embrace all the people. She should represent and symbolise the whole nation. And that means all our diverse communities. So we are here today to say that according to our conscience, we the British people should have a right to elect our head of state. We should be able to choose that person. That person should be chosen based on merit and character, not because they happen to be born into one particular very privileged family. We may be a minority here today, we certainly are. We may have many years yet to struggle to win the democratic principle of an elected head of state. But every single movement for social reform in British history began as a fringe minority movement. The first people who campaigned for the abolition of slavery were a tiny minority. The first people who campaigned for votes for women were a tiny minority. But they persisted. They made the rational arguments. They appealed to people's consciences. And in the end, after many decades, even centuries, they finally won the consensus. Well, I believe our time will come. There will be a day when we will live in a democratic republic and where we, the people, will choose our head of state. Thank you.